He separates. He's to the 20, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Florida State. Warwick got up third down.
Winky looking Winky. Wants to throw the knockout punch to Warwick. Warwick open. Touchdown. He does a touchdown. He did catch it. Touchdown, Florida State. Oh, Peter Warwick, how'd you do that? Kermit Whitfield to the left side. A hole to the 30. Kermit Whitfield to the 30, to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown up and down. Kermit Whitfield, a 100-yard touchdown. Here's the snap. Winston rolling right. Throws the pass on the other. It's caught. It's caught. It's caught. Touchdown FSU. Kelvin Benjamin.
We're doing it for everybody. We're doing it big all over the country, all over the world. And I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm a Florida State Seminole.
This is the Garnet and Old Podcast with your hosts, Ryan Eastman and Vince Ciccarelli.
You are listening to the Garnet and Old Podcast. No inside info, no contacts, no problem. Welcome everyone again to the Garnet and Old Show every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Vince, we have a pretty special show. What do we got going on today?
Well, I want to kind of lead this in and basically say on my Twitter life, I'm always searching for, exciting things to learn about the team, to learn about the game. And last week, I happened upon a few tweets that piqued the interest. And whenever you get to talk about conferences and money and where teams are going and where teams are not going, I love that kind of talk. So I found a couple tweets last week that I want to throw up here on the screen and just kind of set the stage here. So, Ryan, I think you saw these as well. Mm-hmm. Saw this tweet last week about conference realignment, of course. And, mainly, what we've been hearing a lot of around the news cycle is about the Big 12 and the Pac-12, right? But this one, I saw this, right? And then, not too much later, I saw this one. And so what we decided to do, Ryan, you reached out to the gentleman that posted these tweets, and we've got him on the show this evening, and we are going to talk about everything related to conference realignment and just see where the show goes. If you guys are watching online in the chat, if you want to ask some questions of Greg Swaim or Ryan or myself, feel free to do so, and we will put them up on the screen. So, without further ado, let us pull in Greg Swaim. And here he is, everybody.
How y'all doing? I'm doing great. Ready to talk sports.
Exactly. Greg, we really appreciate you taking the time to spend the evening with us. And sure. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the things you tweeted about, just in case any of our listeners, watchers out there are not familiar with you and your background and everything, if you want to just kind of give us a snapshot of that, that'd be great.
Well, got my master's in the late 80s from Oklahoma State in a field called sports geography. Nobody's ever heard about it, so if you guys have it, don't feel too bad. But really study of where athletes come from in certain sports. Like, for instance, in Florida, your neck of the woods, they're going to play football. It's a big football state. Pretty big baseball state, too. Not quite as much basketball, although that's coming for sure. Other states like Indiana's a basketball state. Minnesota, Wisconsin, they play hockey. They don't play hockey down here. So, it's the whole idea of, if you got 100 kids and 5 of them are athletes, what sport are they going to play in the state you're in because of the social behavior, the fans, things like that,
Interesting.
So it really is. And kind of got my foot in the door with Hoop Scoop, a magazine that did recruiting. Been doing that ever since. Went out on my own a couple years later. All the radio stuff, the conference realignment stuff. Never talked about that till about 15 years ago. Matter of fact, Florida State and Clemson were mentioned then because they knew that contract, that you're locked into till 36 is not very good. And it's worse for you guys because, Florida State's won national championships. Clemson's won national championships. But for the most part, Miami, it's been so long since they've done it. And, the other places don't really play quite at the level. It's, and we've talked about, but that's how I got into it anyway. Long story short, it just kind of came upon me in the Twitter stuff and with the radio show and all that. And obviously it's a very popular topic. I think this is my 15th show this month. So, which is fun.
Yes.
I absolutely love doing it. And, other people find out about you that way. But the thing that really has been talked about this week, and I really hadn't been in the ACC at all until the tweets you mentioned. When I got a phone call one day, and can't really tell you who on the air, but that's somebody who is extremely tied in with, let's put it this way, friend of a friend. The friend is very, very, very connected. Okay.
Yeah.
So I get a call one day. It's like, Greg, Clemson and Florida State are wanting out. I'm like, well, tell me something I don't know. He goes, no. They've already got, they're talking to attorneys, big time, some of the biggest attorneys on the planet. They may put together a dream team, because if you look at it, and I was watching a guy today talk about it, I think the numbers he gave, if you waited until 2036 and you just let the contract ride out, Florida State and Clemson, among others, would lose $600 million during that time. And the difference between the SEC and the ACC, Big Ten, the difference would be even more. It's incredible. It's more like $1 billion if it's the Big Ten, right? So if you're in the Big Ten till 2036, let's say Rutgers is going to make $1 billion more than Clemson or Florida State in the next 13 years. That's insane. And that's like, okay, I guess we can afford those lawyers no matter how expensive it is, because we cannot afford to stay.
That's right. Because it's not financially responsible to stay.
Correct.
You can talk in the short term, you can talk about how, quote unquote, we don't have the money, or the money is just too big. But in the long term, it's just not smart to stay. So yeah, that's a big dollar, big dollars.
Well, and guys, we've had lawyers on my show here in the last month that said there's no such thing as an unbreakable contract. I mean, you go out and put together a dream team of legal analysts and lawyers and all that stuff. I mean, ESPN's not going to want to mess with that. They'll settle out of court, some kind of deal, but they really need to let Florida State and Clemson go, because they have no business making that little money with what they have done in the last 20 to 30 years. I mean, Florida State, when I first moved to Stillwater, I was 16 in 1978. And Florida State was not quite what they would become under Bobby Bowden. And they beat Oklahoma State down in Tallahassee. And I knew the only thing I really knew about Florida State at that time, of course I was 16, was that Burt Reynolds had been your quarterback one time.
Right.
But it's really funny what Florida State has been and what Clemson has been, for them to make the same amount of money as a Syracuse or a Duke in football is just insane. And I don't know what's going to happen in the long run. We've talked about the 2 power conferences, and they would take the remnants of the other 3 and whatever. I think what the Big 12 is going to do with your mark, pretty smart guys said, you know what, we're not going to finish 1 or 2. I mean, the SEC and certainly the Big 10 has so much more money. We're just not going to get there. But if we can get number 3 and a strong number 3 and take some of the strength from the East and the West, the ACC and the Pac-12, you're too big to fail, right?
Right.
The NCAA is not going to do anything to you at that point. So what a Florida State and a Clemson have to decide, even after they win, and say, I asked my guy, I said, listen, just to be devil's advocate here, because I know it's going to come up, is, you don't have any offers yet, right? Well, of course, nobody has any offers officially. Everybody, talks through third parties so they can, explain it. Hey, I didn't talk to anybody from the Big Ten or the ACC or whatever.
That way they can deny it. Absolutely.
Deniable plausibility or plausibility denied. And, you and I were talking before the show about Bill Self. Bill Self's done that for a million years, but every good coach has, when somebody's talking to you, well, I'm not talking to him. And you can say that with a straight face. So,
yeah. Well, so let me ask you one thing, because we have a couple of questions that are popping up here in the YouTube comments, and the tweet specifically mentioning that before the season, FSU and Clemson would be making some sort of proclamation that they would officially like to challenge getting out of the ACC, and he even mentioned that there should be some not, we always say that, some news breaking relatively soon in the near future in regards to this. So two things. One, can you speak at all to what your source told you about the timing? And two, does it involve more schools than just Clemson and FSU? Because there is that magic number of half the teams in the ACC, technically, if they all agreed, could break the essentially the contract, right? So what do you know about the timing, and is it just FSU and Clemson?
Well, when I spoke to this guy, he actually got hold of me the way you guys did, on a DM on Twitter, right? Didn't know me from Adam. We've been talking for a little while, and he said, "You're never going to guess who I'm with right now," and who, and he told me, and I'm like, wow. And they're like having a conversation on the phone. We're talking, right? So, but it's one of those deals where I can't give my source. If you're real smart, you probably figure it out.
Yeah.
But somebody big. that's what you know. But I asked him about timing a little bit. He said has no idea. Probably before the football season, and of course, that's when OU and Texas announced. That's when USC and UCLA announced a year later. So maybe you guys and Clemson are the next two, right? So maybe right before the football season, which would be fine. And, exploratory, whatever they call it, you're going to be checking all that out and what conference wants you. It's going to be a bidding war between the SEC and certainly the Big Ten. Now, I've always felt like those two schools were more of a fit for the SEC. What do you guys think?
Well, I threw up the screen here just to talk about them. Ryan is a big fan of SEC for sure.
Yes, I want them to go to the SEC.
Hold on, let me clarify. Not the conference necessarily, but going to the conference.
To go. Yeah,
right.
Well, I mean, I'm an Oklahoma State guy. I think eventually, if you ask me 20 years from now, Oklahoma State's in the SEC too, but they're not anywhere near the pecking order at the top of the list. You guys are.
So I'm more of in the camp of wanting to go to the Big Ten, and more so because, to be honest with you, screw the SEC. Right? We hear so much of that around here, and
I'm sure you do.
and all of the bickering about this conference, that conference, and how this is all old school stuff about how there's a gentleman's agreement that Florida would never let Florida State. They would veto that in a heartbeat. So okay, whatever. If the Big Ten came calling, this is kind of what I want to refer to as Petitti's March, Sherman's March, right? If he wanted to get into the Southeast, he could go after North Carolina, South Carolina, or North Carolina, Clemson, Georgia Tech, and us. And then you've got North Carolina, the state, South Carolina, the state, Georgia, the state, and Florida, the state. And to me, that would be a coup. And the SEC would probably fight that for sure. And all the gentlemen's agreements would go out the window, because I do not think that the SEC would want the Big Ten to incursion within within the Southeast. So that's my preference.
You mentioned the footprint thing. I mean, South Carolina's not going to want Clemson in there. They never have, right?
Right.
So now, what's Florida going to think about Florida State and Miami coming in there? Probably not real happy about it. So
that's right.
But it is what it is. I mean, the conference has to do what they have to do to survive. Somebody told me today, I agree with this 100%. You guys probably do too. If Florida State and Clemson left tomorrow, the conference is dead. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Like last year, we were sweating pretty good here in the Big 12 land because, we just lost our two biggest fish. And I can say that. I hate saying it because I'm an Oklahoma State guy.
Right.
But, those are two pretty big dogs, right? And we thought, gosh, hey, Pac-12, please give us a lifeline, at least to some of us. They didn't do it. Then a year later, same thing happens to them, right? And ESPN and Fox talked to them, go, it'd be the best thing here is if you guys just did a flat-out merger.
Right.
You'd have a West Division and an East Division. East Division's what the current Big 12 is. West Division's Pac-12, right? Maybe add a few more teams, even up later. Pac-12 said no. I mean, they're so snobby academically, which this isn't about academics, folks. I hate to tell you. I've got a master's, so I'm kind of into academics. My dad has a PhD, but listen, this is about sport.
Yeah, viewership and eyeballs.
Exactly. And so that being said, I think, once Florida State and Clemson decide to go, it's all over but the crying. And if Oregon and Washington were to somehow go to the Big Ten, and they're just waiting hand and knee and hat in hand, waiting for the Big Ten to offer them, they're gone, and then the Pac-12's done. So what are we going to get? We're going to get some of the teams from the ACC can go to all three conferences.
That's right.
Nobody from the Pac-12 can go anywhere besides the Big 12, and a few of them might have a chance to go in SEC. But the ACC would be worthless to get an invite at this point because the money they're going to be making, and the SEC is not going to invite anybody from the Pac-12 because it's just not a fit at all.
Yeah.
The best team's gone for sure.
Yeah, so, it's definitely not a culture fit. It's not a geography fit. And to be honest with you, as high snooty as the Pac-12 tends to be, the SEC is not that way in terms of academics. Their snootiness doesn't come from that part of it. It comes from sports.
Well, and the Pac-12 reminds me of the guy that's drowning, and you're in a boat. You go by save. He goes, no, my friend's coming in later. He's going to save me, and he drowns waiting for him when he had an opportunity. And they're just, and I'm dealing with these guys the last couple months, fans, which everybody has their crazies. Utah's got their, share and then some. And Utah is talking, academics that rank 105th. They wouldn't even be in the top 3 in the Big 12 if they joined today. So let's not get too snooty because they're not Harvard, they're not Yale, they're not even Stanford, which is in their own conference, and probably won't get a bid to go anywhere.
Yeah, there's a school that we know of, Ryan, that calls themselves the Harvard of the South. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Is there a Harvard of the South?
No, not in reality. That's in delusion land. Like it's the team that has yet to win the ACC championship, or even.
No, actually, that's the SEC school that calls themselves the Harvard of the South. But that's neither here nor there.
Yep. Throw up that second tweet, Vince.
I've learned that on the radio stuff, guys. It's okay if you mention their name because they'll hear about it, they'll tell their friends, and they'll hate you the next time.
Yeah.
Vince, if you could throw up Greg's tweet, the second one from this past weekend for me. So the last
come back
point I
to
want
that
to
here in a second.
Before we go to conference realignment as a whole and get any final thoughts from you as far as that goes. Specifically, you mentioned we'll quote him when his story pops next week. So safe to assume that this person themselves is writing a story about this. When do you think we'll hear more from this source directly?
Well, it's not really who the source is because he's not a traditional journalist. Okay. It's kind of like maybe like me, where he kind of does it as part of a show or something. Sports radio is definitely not journalism. But I've got friends who remind me of that all the time, and I go, "That's good because I'm not a journalist." One semester, my first semester, majored in mass media, and I think I got out of it when I found out how much money it pays. So this is a lot better. But no, I really think that this thing's going to happen on all conferences. But I think the Big 12 is going to benefit the most. I'd love for Florida State and Clemson to come in the Big 12, but I don't think I wouldn't if I were them. Got kind of offered the money they're going to get. So, too, with the playoffs going to 12, one of the things that's holding the Pac-12 together a little bit is this conference is going to be a lot easier to win.
Absolutely.
What they're not thinking of is it's not going to be easy to get second, third place and still get in at large. So
And eventually the money is going to not add up. And so, while the first couple of years they'll be able to compete, pretty soon the gap is going to be way, way too large.
No, it's absolutely is. The money, like you said, I mean, if you guys were today in the Big Ten and Clemson stayed in the ACC in 2036, keep saying 19, that shows how old I am.
Yeah.
2036, like I said, you'd be $1 billion in the hole. So, or they would. So,
it's not going to happen.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Here's the other thing too. Schools have to, these snobby academic, with their
there you go.
Nose in the air guys, they got to remember, I mean, like I told you, my dad has a PhD in engineering. He was the engineering associate dean of the college at Oklahoma State. And he used to get up at 6 o'clock every home game. Remember back when home games were always at 1:30? Or 2:30 or where, he would get up at 6, go to Engineering South building and meet every alum that came in. I said, what are your biggest donation days for engineering? Not for athletics, or for the engineering department. The 7 home games a year blow away the entire rest of the year combined.
Yeah,
because it's the face of the school, like it or not.
Everybody says, it's the front porch of the school, and if your front porch is crappy, your rest is going to be crappy.
Right. So this question here from Kurt.
Is there any chance? So 2 questions. Kurt has an interesting thing here. Would they FSU and Clemson need to become AAU? Basically, every school in the Big Ten is AAU. Would FSU and Clemson need to be that? And then we have another question from Elijah Wright. Any chance, in your opinion, just off the cuff, that FSU and Clemson could join in 2024 at the same time as Texas and California? Is that too soon?
Not that soon, no, because you have to give at least a year, and I don't think we're going to meet that deadline. Heck, Pac-12 may not be done by then. I mean, everybody's saying, we're, every one of the school's presidents saying, we're locked in until we hear what the package is going to be. Well, I think the package is going to be about half what the Big 12's making.
Right.
If it was within 5 or 6, they're probably going to stay. I don't think it's going to be that close. And worse yet, if it's going to be Apple, which I think it's going to be, all of their games are going to be streamed. Not a one of them is going to be linear TV.
Yep.
Try to sell that to a recruit's mom that lives in South Dakota. I mean, it just doesn't work, People want to watch their kid on TV. And so nobody's going to go west. All the West Coast kids are now going to go to other parts of the country, and they're just going to die on the vine. I don't think they get it. For being such smart people, they're kind of dumb.
They're just holding on to old ways, I think.
Back to 107 years tradition. That's right.
And they want to, it's tough for people to think of a world without the Pac-12, to think of a world without the Atlantic Coast. But, those decisions of those deaths were made a couple of years ago. And those conferences did not move when they needed to, when they had more of the leverage to make it happen.
But when the ACC and the Pac-12, who have, the worst packages right now, when they first signed, and they signed longer than anybody else as far as a deal, they had a better deal.
Yeah.
The problem is these TV people, and I've learned a lot about the TV sports media industry recently, is that they don't make their profit until the back end of the contract. The Pac-12 right now is going, well, we can't really decide what we want to do, so we don't want to sign a 12-year contract. We'd rather do a 5-year. Who's going to do that? The money's going to be terrible. Well, we know we're giving up a little money. No, you're giving up a lot of money, and you don't have a whole lot left to spare. So,
right.
Yep. One question I do want to bring up that Michael, who just posted in chat, and I want to be the realist. I'm just going to be the honest guy to say it, Vince, if you want to bring it up. This sounds amazing. Should we still think about other sports, volleyball, soccer, all the non-football sports? As an alum of FSU, and I'm sure the same thing from Oklahoma State, did we love other sports? Of course. Do we want to see them do well? Of course. I hate to tell you, none of these decisions will be based on anything else other than football. So the money is maybe basketball.
I said that too.
Yeah.
But give about this much basketball, okay?
Yep.
Right.
Basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, your Mark kind of taught me this. The new commissioner of the Big 12, he's going after Gonzaga, possibly some other schools, possibly UConn, some others that are more known for basketball, because he feels like basketball is going to be a whole lot more marketable in the future, that they can actually have separate deals for basketball, so they give money to Gonzaga and the schools that just play basketball. Creighton was mentioned, Marquette, people like that. So a lot going on. Things are changes. Like guy reminded me last week that was on the show. He goes, the problem with what you're covering is you can be 100% right one day and 100% wrong the next day. So I keep that in mind. Years ago, maybe 13 years ago, the last time this really popped up, we were actually talking about Florida State and Clemson leaving.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of wanting out then, or at least making more money, and it just didn't work out. And so every once in a while, I'll say something, make a little prediction, and Florida State and Clemson fans remind me of that. But that's okay. It was right at the time. I mean, there was definitely talk.
Yeah,
So,
and I think there were feelers being put out at that time. It just wasn't the right time to do it, and our lives away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's I think we're getting to the point now where the money, back then the money was fairly even.
Right.
Now we're talking the difference. Like I said, what in 13 years, $1 billion, guys, difference. Yeah, you kind of, that line from Hoosiers where he goes, there's two kinds of crazy. One of them you're forced to deal with. This one, Florida State and Clemson need to deal with.
Yeah,
exactly right. And I want to go back to this question here, because when you talk about the dollars, he's right. He says, remember sports like volleyball, soccer, they don't want the cost of going, but you're going to be able to afford that.
Yeah,
you're going to be able to afford that. The rising tide lifts all boats.
And your guys' softball program has been really good. Obviously, baseball's been really good. You're going to have an advantage with the spring sports because of the weather and things like that maybe in the North they don't have. I mean, when's the last time a Northern team won a national championship in baseball? Unless you consider Oregon State, Northern, they haven't. Because they're at a terrific disadvantage. So you talk about other sports like that. If the football team is big enough, like Florida State Seminoles are, to go out and get a better deal with one of the two big power conferences that pays, the volleyball coach and the softball coach and whoever else ought to come give coach a kiss right on the mouth.
Absolutely.
Because that money's coming right to them.
That's right. And for people like me, I know it's coming. Ryan, it's coming. We know that this shift is going to happen, and everybody wants it to happen quickly. It's just the decision will be made and you'll hear about it, and that'll be quick. But the time it takes when Florida State and Clemson move to a different conference is going to take a little bit longer, right? You're just not going to flip the switch like that. But it would be nice to know, that statement is out there and the time is coming, because like you started off, Ryan, at the beginning of the show, and Greg, you said the same thing, which is how many of these schools in the Atlantic Coast have just been pocketing money for years and years and years and not doing anything. I'm going to say not doing anything with it, but not holding up their end of the bargain. There is no reason why a Syracuse or a Wake Forest or any one of those teams should be making as much money as Florida State or Clemson or North Carolina, a handful maybe of teams.
And you help me segue right into the next conversation. I'll get back to the non-revenue sports if needed. But the thing is, if I'm Florida State and Clemson, and they've been in the ACC for a while, before State came later because they were independent. Clemson, I think, has always been there, right, from like day one. But they're going to have to make a decision. Do they really want to stay? Because it's kind of like the Pac-12 schools. All things being equal, they want to stay. All things being equal, you guys want to stay. But in your case, it's not even equitable close, right? So you've got to make that decision. And really, it's not just a decision for football. because you have to carry all those other sports. I mean, football has a strong back. They're carrying everybody, except maybe a little bit. Basketball kind of covers themselves. That's for another day. And I do think basketball, the numbers this year on TV really helped. Mm-hmm. I think they were higher than they've been in a while. And I think that's going to really help too with basketball. And you guys have had a good basketball program. I mean, you've been to the Elite Eight and stuff with Leonard. So that's good. And that's really, other than the connection that called me from Clemson, I'd say about 75% of the information I get comes from a place I'm pretty sure none of my competitors get it from, basketball coaches. They've been taking my service for 35 years. I mean, some of them are like brothers and cousins. So a lot of times I'll go, hey, we had lunch with my AD today. Guess what he said? So I get some tidbits maybe others don't get. I'm sure they get a lot that I don't get because, they have other sources. But, yeah, when somebody says, yeah, you're just making this up in your head, I'm like, yeah. If I was making this up in my head, I'd be doing something else because this is not always a fun job, really.
No, I mean, and when you put something out there like you did, you're going to attract attention because it is a subject that people want to talk about because it's new and people, people like us, we're tired of carrying the load and we know we're falling behind. So when you put something out like that, I'm sure you get people of all types, coming at you like, and probably rightly so. You're not going to, give a date and time because that would just really ask for the crazies to come out.
Well, and with Klykov right now kicking the can down the road, moving the goalpost every week, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it came out. We won't know till 2024. Hopefully it'll be tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure it's not. And then I can focus all my attention on the ACC, right?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Exactly. So, I mean, the good news is, though, I mean, it sounds like, based on what you've heard, that we'll at least have a definitive answer from the two schools, Clemson and Florida State, that they intend on making the official statement that we are going to pursue leaving the ACC, which they have not yet said. They've hinted at and they've nudged and they've made comments and slide comments at the ACC kickoff, but they have not yet said we are doing what we need to do to explore other options outside this conference. And so what it sounds like is you're saying very soon, probably before the football season, we'll at least hear that. Yes.
Yeah, I would think the timing, and I've talked to some other people who are doing this that, get along pretty good and we share information. Well, what do you think on the timing of the ACC? Because, we've all kind of been tunnel vision with the Pac-12 deal, and that involves the Big 12, obviously, and a little bit of involves the Big 10 because there's talk that Washington and Oregon could go that way. They get, West Coast partners for USC and UCLA. But really, to be honest with you, I'm a little perplexed on how long it would take on the ACC because there's a lot of moving factors. For one, I think the very first thing, and you probably already done it, we may not know for a while, but I'm pretty sure the ADs and presidents at both Clemson and Florida State have told the ACC, listen, look how much money we make for your conference. Just go look at the numbers. And we need more to stay in this conference because we're going to lose up to $1 billion the next 13 years. You throw out a number like that, that'll open up your commissioner's eyes, and you just rehired him, right? So this is a guy who did he get you in this mess? I don't remember the timing on that, but I mean, why keep a guy who got you in this deal in the first place?
Yeah, the guy that got us in the deal in the first place, Swafford. Right? Okay. Right. Swafford. He's gone. And at the time, everybody kind of signed on to it for a ridiculous amount of time.
We were desperate to have an ACC network. That's what that was about, is that we saw the SEC network. We said, oh my God, that's the future. Everyone's going to only be watching the conference network. And we said, no matter what, we will give you whatever ESPN will sign up for whatever timeline. We want our own network. And that's what that was about. It was still, even taking that into account back then, most people in our sphere thought it was a terrible, terrible idea.
Well,
yeah, because it's too long.
It is. And like I said, those TV people make their money on the back end. If they don't have at least a 10-year deal, it's very difficult for them to make the kind of money and still pay you the kind of money that you want. So there's a lot of moving pieces on this, certainly. And like I said, everything could change tomorrow if let's say Colorado and Arizona decide they're going to the Big 12 tomorrow. I think at that point it would be done.
Yeah.
And then your mark in the Big 12 decide, hey, we're going to wait and see what happens with the Clemson, because they already know about it too. I've actually taught some of the Big 12. They know that Florida State and Clemson aren't just going to wait around, right?
Yeah.
They've heard the rumors. I think they probably talked to probably directly to the same person I talked to indirectly. So I really think something's going to happen, but it may be more likely to happen after the Pac-12 finally does something.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that'll be tonight or tomorrow, guys, because I want my life back. This is not what I do full time.
No, but it's just a topic that everybody loves to talk about.
Oh,
they just love to talk about it.
Everybody else is, yeah. I was going through, watching some of your old stuff today, just kind of see what who you talk to, things like that, and I'm flipping around, and some of these live shows are going on. And I go, what are they talking about today? And if they're talking NFL or NBA, they had like 14, viewers.
Right.
If they're talking conference realignment, they had a couple thousand.
Yeah.
So it obviously is a topic that people are interested in.
And we are looking forward to it. And if you would agree to it, when that news does drop, we'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. You follow me on Twitter, so
yeah,
when it happens, I'm going to be posting it. So
yeah, absolutely. That's probably where we'll hear about it first, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right. You'll hear about the same thing everybody else does, right?
That's right.
If I remember, I'll give you 10 minutes early. So
awesome. Well, hey,
Excellent.
Greg, before we let you go, because this was truly a pleasure. Like, we're so grateful for you coming on tonight, and we will be posting this as a podcast pretty shortly after the live stream ends. But tell us, and tell our audience, where can they find you? If someone's not familiar with you and your show, where can they listen to you?
Well, you can go to G Swain, follow me on Twitter. But as far as listening, go to gregswain.com and click radio. And there's a whole page there. It's got old shows and when the show's live, and when we get a new show on, it'll be on there as well.
Great. Excellent. Well, Greg, thank you so much. And for those of you that are in the chat, if you want to continue to talk about this, Ryan and I are going to continue to talk about it, answer some questions that might be in there. But Greg, have a great evening. Hopefully you get some rain, because I know you need it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll talk with you soon with some breaking news.
All right, guys. I hope so. Let's keep our fingers crossed for tonight or tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
See ya.
Greg. Have a great night.
You too.
That was great,
Well,
Vince. What a great guy talking with Greg. And so one thing I heard at the end I thought was interesting. I think it was a Freudian slip that he said the news that he heard, specifically with ACC making this announcement soon, was coming from the Clemson side of things, from the Clemson football side of things. And that's where his source was. So I think without and then he mentioned knowing a lot of his sources coming from basketball. So I think there's some inferences there for people to take some stabs at maybe who he was talking about. But that's not important. What is important is that it sounds like there's going to be official proclamations of we are doing the official steps to leave the conference before the football season. I think that's the biggest thing we take away here.
Well, and why would you do that? The reason why you would do that is because you have not gotten the answers from the conference that you needed to hear, which is we're going to give you more dollars. And we probably already knew that wasn't going to happen, but you at least have to ask that question. For due diligence, in good faith, you say, we are bringing in the viewers. We need to be taking more of the pie. And then you say, what can you do to make that happen? The conference is not going to do that. And so it's, we tried. So at this point, we have to do what's financially responsible for our school, our programs, and this is what's going to happen, regardless of the amount of money, right? And so Michael, I posted this a little bit ago, but yeah, I have heard this too, that the getting out of the conference piece, I believe we already have those dollars. I believe if that was all it took, we would already be out, to be honest with you.
Yes, but
We
it's
would
not
already
just
be
that
out.
simple.
But it's not that simple because of the rights, that will go on to 2036. So I agree with you on that, Michael, for sure. What do we got here as well? Michael's chatty here. Here we go. Thinking away from football, for a sport like baseball and the money for them, would you rather have a series against Michigan, Iowa, Michigan State, or my preference. I want the Big Ten, but I am perfectly fine with the SEC as well, right? So
can I answer this, Vince? So my reason I want to...
Either one of these, though, as far as baseball teams and baseball series, would be fantastic.
My view on joining the SEC, my preference to join the SEC versus the Big Ten, is purely selfish for me being able to more easily drive to conference games and be able to explore neighboring cities and towns that are pretty close to Florida. Just thinking about the game day atmospheres of the SEC and it not being freezing cold in November and December. So it would be fun, I'm sure, to join the Big Ten. But, then I'm thinking flights and, me having to pack coats and all that. Now, granted, I would love to watch them on TV. I would watch Florida State, Ohio State on TV and love it. I would think it was awesome. But I selfishly would love to drive to Georgia, to drive to Alabama, to go to these other stadiums, which would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, geographically, it makes the most sense, right? Mm-hmm. From a rivalry standpoint, from a culture standpoint, the SEC is the better cultural fit. I totally get that. I just, from a almost a spite for me sometimes, like, let's do something different and it's finally say, we didn't need you then, we don't need you now.
Yeah.
Right. So that's more of a spite thing for me.
For sure. And one thing I do want to say to all our audience out there is that if you think that conference realignment can just happen at the snap of the fingers, I wish, trust me, I wish that was the case for everyone watching out there, that you could just join a new conference overnight, make the announcement. That's awesome. But if we're thinking realistic timelines, here's what goes through my mind. I think Greg is absolutely spot on that we probably get some formal announcement from FSU and Clemson, probably in a joint, whatever teams are going to make the announcement. I would assume it'd be a joint press conference called where the ADs and the presidents for those schools would be on the same call live to announce that we intend on leaving the conference and challenging the buyout. But once that happens, guys, like that's when it really starts to get cooking. Because once we make it obvious, hey, we're out, then you get the lobbying efforts between, if there is any kind of lobbying between the Big Ten and the SEC, and who wants who. And then after that, then you get the actual join day. So like if you were to take Texas and Oklahoma as an example, we were hearing rumors about them joining the SEC 2 years ago, and they're not joining until 2024. So if you do the math there, that's a 4-year period. So if we take that same trajectory, at minimum, we are probably looking, honestly, at like 2026, 2027 season before we actually get to join the SEC or the Big Ten. But that is still miles better than what is it, 2036?
Which is kind of what I'm expecting to happen. Now, I don't know that I expect a joint conference or a joint press release with schools, but I expect a coordinated press release, right? And for those, I've heard all along, teams have to have a landing spot before they're going to make that kind of decision. Florida State has a landing spot. If Florida State made the decision, we are just going to put it out there, either the Big Ten or the SEC, either one of them absolutely is going to pick up Florida State and Clemson. It's the other schools that maybe do not have maybe that kind of confidence that they have a landing spot, but they do. They do. There's only maybe 3 or 4 teams in our conference that really are looking at maybe going G5 or a lower tier conference.
Yeah.
This is a good point here from Michael. The level of booster completely changes the venue for opposing opponents to come to Tallahassee. That's true. Ryan, you were just kind of saying that. The home games, the amount of pageantry around Tally, when Auburn's coming into town, it would be, or Texas, would be fantastic. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So Vince, wrapping up, because I think we've covered all the facts that we know as of today and in the near future as far as conference realignment goes. But we don't want to end the show without mentioning some big transfer portal news. Vince, what do we have happening in the portal today, which for once was not good news for Florida State?
Well, yeah, I mean, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And I think this is, while we've had some guys go into the portal, today he announced Joshua Farmer
on his new Twitter account while he got reactivated on his old Twitter
on
account.
His other Twitter account. So he was a defensive lineman out of the Panhandle, I believe.
Yeah.
Was a 3-star and I don't think he had a ton of offers from big time schools, but he came to Florida State and bulked up and the coaches wanted him and they saw something in him, and now he is taking his talents elsewhere. We don't know where yet.
Well, this reeks of it seems to align with comments that a certain Miami coach a booster made last week, where Diaz mentioned that even some current FSU players are contacting them about potential NIL deals. So I'm not reporting this, I'm not announcing this, but I would not be shocked if he doesn't land at the University of Miami.
Yeah, I mean, it's all rumor and hearsay on who's involved. I've heard that Georgia's involved, right? So,
but who wouldn't go to Georgia,
Right. So, I mean, the deal is, and I've also heard that in this particular situation, there's been several times where we've kind of gone back to the NIL negotiating table over the course of time to continually, escalate that. Yeah. And I think at this point, and I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is true and you've kind of gone back to the negotiating table 3 or 4 times, maybe the 5th time you go back, it's kind of like, what, you're never going to be happy. So, maybe another venue is the right place for you. Now, I hate to lose him because he was really starting to come on and he would have been a pivotal player in the depth of that unit. Mm-hmm. But we've been doing a lot of taking from the portal. And in this instance,
that doesn't have to end though, Vince. I mean, you would assume that just like it taketh away, that you would assume that there's some moves that we're going to make over the summer where someone else had a freshman that was bulking up and looked amazing in the spring game. And now we are still very deep on the defensive line, but maybe, man, that was a good piece. And now we get, if there's one thing I trust Mike Norvell and company in, it's identifying talent. So I'm not at all concerned that we won't find 2 or 3 players still in the portal to still join the roster in the summer. I mean, it's likely going to happen. So you just have to in this current environment, we cannot handle NIL like we used to get mad about recruits decommitting. It's not the same. You are going to have every year, if you're any good at all, every single year you're going to lose.
You're going to re-recruit your own team,
and you're going to get players. And you're going to be mad, and then you're going to be happy, and you're going to be mad, and you're going to be happy. But you just have to understand that's not a Florida State problem. That's every single team in the whole country.
That's across the board. And the part that makes me feel better about it is that because of the culture that Norvell and the staff have built, it makes it harder, I believe, for the guys to make that decision to go into the portal. If there's more money and the money makes the difference, you and I talk about this in terms of life, Ryan. You like where you're at. You like where you're at. You like where you're at. It would take a lot to get you to go somewhere else. But at some point, if that number is game changing, then
We would all
you don't fault somebody for doing that. But the only thing Norvell and the staff can do is continue to build a culture where people want to play. And I think they do that, and I think they're great at it. And so, yeah, you're right. There are going to be more portal players coming. By the way, off topic a little bit. I saw a picture of a wide receiver in a dorm that should have been part of our program a number of years ago. And I think we're getting close, Ryan. I think we're getting close.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, the unicorn's going to make an appearance. I do want to mention real quick, Vince, not coincidental that today one Jordan Travis tweeted out that he is so proud to be, a Florida State Seminole.
Every day.
I think that's a rallying call that says, hey, everyone, yeah, one guy left, but I'm here and we're about to win a lot of games. That's what that tweet is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people on social media that live and breathe this stuff, the team is their passion, right? Every little thing that happens tweaks your emotion and lunatic fringe sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the deal is that the program is extremely stable and the program is extremely has a lot of depth and the ceiling is very high and there's nothing to worry about. So enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride because it's going to be a good ride this year.
Well, I enjoyed the ride with you tonight, Vince. And I do want to say for everyone who joined us for the Greg Talk or for Jeff Cameron coming on a couple weeks ago or Melina Myers a couple weeks before that, hey, we're happy you're here and we want more people to watch the show, share it, like it, subscribe. We're on every podcasting service known to man. I mean, any podcast, or if you search Garnet and Old, you're going to be able to find our channel.
I'll make up some.
Yeah,
I'll make up some
us.
podcasts.
We do a show every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. every Tuesday. So we're not one of these podcasts that, every 4 months, we say, hey, we're back and sorry about all the 4 months that we're not here. We're going to be here. So join us, like and subscribe, tell your friends, and we're so excited you're here for Garnet and Old.
And let me add one other thing before we close out the show, Ryan, is that, and because we have some new people tonight, and so our thing, Ryan and I's thing, is like we're just fans, right? We have no inside information. Occasionally, we'll get someone that we've DM'd or whatever on. We have no contacts that are of any significance, really. But it's no problem. We still find the time to talk about the team we love and to bring news and bring information as we know it. And so we do. We would appreciate if you enjoyed the show tonight. Share it out. And Ryan and I enjoy doing it, and we will continue to do it every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And as the season gets closer, we have some additional things coming up with live events we're going to do as well, as far as on location live events, and just some additional content coming as the season gets closer.
For sure. And again, thank you guys so much for stopping by. It was so great talking with Greg tonight. Another great Garnet and Old show. No inside info, no contacts, no problem.
Go Noles.
Go Noles.